to start, I just kind of wanted to read some of your stats from this last season because they're pretty amazing. So you were the second highest scorer in the Big East, 640 points, averaging 20 points per game. You were 10th in rebounding, fifth in free throw percentage, sixth in assists, 10th in block shots. You were the Big East most improved player of the year, the Big East scholar athlete of the year. You crossed 1,000 points at DePaul, and this season you set the single season program record in free throws. So quite the list. You definitely found success in like every aspect of the game this season. So I guess what allowed you to be so successful?
Yeah, I just my college career every year I saw steady growth in my skill set and more so my confidence and my ability to do what I'm good at and leaning into everyone what I love about the game of basketball is there's so many specialists in the game. Like so just like being good at what you do, you can have such an impact. Um And I just, yeah, finally I fell in love with the mid-range jump shot this season. I mean, I remember last spring and summer, and I've always had a pretty decent jump shot, but just getting really confident and letting it fly. And that allowing shooting that jump shot like so consistently allowed me to, it opened up my game. And I also just went into this season as a 6-year grad student on my team. I had to be what everybody else on the team needed. So we needed scoring. We needed, a cool head on the court. Um, we needed some consistency in practice. So every day I just went in, I just tried to be what everybody else needed. And being a 6 year, you see a little bit of yourself and all your teammates and where all the, trials and tribulations and then the successes too. So I tried to be an encouraging voice. I tried to be stern and I demanded a lot of my girls. But yeah, I attribute my success this past season to my teammates and my coaches because they brought the best out of me and I tried to be, there for them.
Would you say that this season, kind of from the get-go, you kind of were in a groove, or was there like a moment where things kind of fell into place and you really started kind of flowing?
So this off season, I played well. This the past off last summer is when I consider the off season, and we were practicing, and I was playing well and feeling good, and I was healthy. This was the first year I like didn't miss a game. I was really taking care of my body, and we got into preseason practice, and unfortunately, Coach Bruno had to step away, and we had 8 new girls on the team and we weren't really sure how good we were going to be. We didn't know what to expect. And I remember our exhibition game in October. Um, I got a little emotional before the game because we were going through our pregame routine without Coach Bruno, and it's the first time like I'd ever experienced a game at DePaul without him. And we get into the game, and I felt nerves, and then all my other girls were just at the same time. It's the first time playing another team in front of people. And then once that game started, immediately like I got a bucket like within the first minute and I was just like, all right, let's go. And I just remember something shifting in that moment because I got that first bucket and everyone just kind of like relaxed a little bit. And I had a great game that game and from there on out it was obvious that, the team was gonna go as I went. Um and I didn't really view that as pressure as much as a privilege just because I had been on the team for so long, 5 years, and um put in a lot of hours and put in a lot my coaches had a lot of trust in me and I knew the system well. And I had a lot of confidence in my teammates too. And the more they saw me, step into that role, that leadership role and be confident, the more settled they played and it we just kind of rolled from there. But yeah, that exhibition game was the moment where I was like, all right, this is gonna be my year.
That's cool that you had that moment so early on, and it was that moment that you were able to kind of take advantage of that. And you guys are in the Big East, and so definitely one of the most competitive D1 conferences. What was it like kind of playing against these powerhouse teams like UConn and Paige Beckers throughout your time in college? And do you feel like playing against that level of competition kind of increased your own game?
Definitely. The Big East is such a great conference. Oh my gosh. And this year especially, it was a lot of fun because UConn, of course, separated themselves to the top, but then from the 2 spot to the 10th spot, everyone was kind of neck and neck, just beating up at each other. And like, no, I mean, I think every conference game we had, it was just a grind. never ever a for sure win, and it was never ever a for sure loss. Like we were, the competition was fierce this year, and um, there was a lot of really great players, especially you know, Lauren Jensen and Morgan Molly at Creighton. I played against them for 5 years, and um, such great players. And of course, Paige Beckers. I remember when she came in as a freshman, and just to see how individuals have developed and how teams have developed, and um, to play in such a basketball focused conference too. Like the Big East is a basketball conference. Um, it it was an amazing college experience, and definitely, I mean, you have to elevate your game when you're going up against, UConn twice a year, and you've got unfortunately we didn't really see the team success that you strive for in the past couple of years, but that's due to the fact that the Big East is such a tough basketball conference.
Yeah, that's yeah. That we were lucky enough to be at the tournament, and it just the level of play was really cool. And so I kind of wanted to shift to that, like looking back to your final game in a DePaul jersey, you guys almost pulled off a really amazing comeback. What was kind of going through your head when you stepped off the court for the final time?
Uh, that game was Xavier had an amazing game that game. Oh my gosh. And it's really almost difficult to not be happy for them because they had struggled all year, and they've been, a program who's trying to find themselves with, coaching changes and r roster turnovers, and but I remember in the game it just felt like nothing was going our way. Absolutely nothing was going our way. And I looked over, and my mom and dad and my aunt and uncle were there. I looked at my mom and my dad, and they were just like, "Come on!" I was like, "All right, come on." So I just kept chipping away, and little by little, yeah, we dug ourselves out of that hole, and I thought we were gonna pull it off, but unfortunately, I mean, that's the game. It's really hard to beat a good team who's playing well, when you get down 20. So, but I remember walking off the floor, and I got a little emotional. I tried to hold it in so bad. I just tried to smile it off, but I'm a crier. Like I knew I was gonna cry. Gave Jill a hug, and um hugged my other assistant coaches. Shook my teammates' hands because the handshake was my kind of my thing. Like instead of high fives in practice and games, I would always just shake the girls' hands and say pleasure doing business with you. It's kind of like a thing. Um, and I was emotional, definitely, but at the same time, it's not a surprise. Everyone knows it. I think I was more emotional on senior day just because the focus was all on me, and I had 30 family members there and so many friends, and um, there was just a lot of reflection on, highs and lows and injuries and the COVID year, and oh my gosh, but that I was just really thankful, and those last moments stepping off the floor. Um, and to have your teammates kind of get emotional for you too, and know that you meant something to them. I mean, there's nothing more fulfilling than to be needed, right? And in this past
Mhm.
year, I was needed, and I think that's ultimately like what you work towards once you've been someplace for so long, is you want to be the one that people look to, and um, you want to be somebody that people want to share success with. So the support I had from my coaches and my teammates and my family. Um, my mom and dad have been, chasing me around the country, watching me play basketball for the past 20 years. It was a really cool moment, to bittersweet, of course, but just to kind of see where I've gotten, and then and all the love I have. It was a great way to go out, even though it was not a great way to go out. But yeah.
Yeah. I know you were there for so long. I'm sure you have tons of experiences and stories, but are there a few or one that kind of comes to mind that you'll immediately associate when someone says, like, tell me about your time at DePaul?
Oh gosh. I mean, Coach Bruno is the kind of coach that well, he's the kind of person that if you just sit and tell stories to somebody, you think it's like he's a TV character. Just his mannerisms, and I mean, what an emotional guy. I mean, old Chicago Italian guy. He's so hard on you in practice, and then immediately comes up to you and like is is teasing you and laughing with you and making sure you're okay, making sure he knows you still love him. Um, but he just has so many like coined phrases that I love to brag about. Like, I mean, we talk about getting low in a defensive stance and he's like, don't be a giraffe on a circus train with bopping up and down. And it's stuff like that. I mean, stay balanced, your head's like a bowling ball on a stick. I mean, he has so many little quips like that. But I when I look back at my time at DePaul, it's moments with Coach Bruno, whether it be laughing or crying with him, because there'd be times where I'd end up in his office and something, difficult was going on and I'd confide in him just because he's like a grandpa, And he's one of the main reasons I ended up at DePaul. I wanted to play for him. But the moments that I'm always going to hold on to and cherish are moments with him and then moments with my teammates. Um and it's not just like the in the game or the big wins and stuff like that. It's just the coming in every day at the practice facility and warming up with the girls and joking about doing hard drills and how it's gonna suck and but it's gonna be fine because we're doing it together and it's the day-to-day stuff that you miss and that's the stuff I'm gonna cherish because I do believe that the joy of the game and the joy of life is in the mundane things, the things you get to do every day with people that you really love and trust and grow around. So yeah.
I think that was very well said. So yeah, kind of pivoting, now that it is over and you don't have the routine of practices and games and everything that goes with it, what's getting your focus? What have you been doing? What have you been up to lately?
Oh gosh. Well, I always said I didn't want to coach, right? And then Bruno used to tease me too because he always called me his coach on the floor. Um and I was like I'm never coaching. Like I don't know how you do it. The patience and the dedication it takes. And he would just laugh and he was like you say that now, but wait until you're done playing and you got to step away from the game. So I've thought about potentially getting into coaching, maybe a GA someplace. I'm finishing my master's degree right now. I'm getting my Master of Fine Arts in Writing and Publishing. I'm a creative writer. I specialize in creative nonfiction, and I'm piecing together a memoir right now. About my experience, everything we've been talking about. I'm kind of just it's been an ongoing project for a couple years now, and luckily I was able just to turn that into school. So, um, writing a thesis right now and on memoir, and hopefully I get that done. I know the senioritis is hitting me, but that happens to everybody. But re most recently, I'm trying out for the Olympic rugby team. I know
Okay.
it's crazy. So I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, maybe I'll go play overseas. I'm not ready to be done. I'm not sure if I wanted to keep playing basketball, but I'm not done being an athlete. I love being an athlete. I love training. I love that lifestyle. And it is a lifestyle, right? So,
hmm
and then I'm on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I get a call from my coach, Jill Pizzotti, and she's like, I just got an email from the Olympic rugby team, and they want me to call him. I was like, call him. I don't know. Um, yeah, and they invited me out to a training camp in June in San Diego. Apparently they do this crossover camp every year where they invite 20 athletes with no rugby experience to come and try out just because they need bodies and they need elite athletes and rugby's not a very popular sport among the American youth. So I've been lifting and running like nobody's business. I mean, I'm gonna be in better shape than I ever was for basketball, and that's saying something because I I feel like I didn't come out this past year unless I was in foul trouble. And I look back now, I don't know how I did it because I remember being an underclassman as a freshman and sophomore, and it's like if you played 20 minutes a game, like, ooh, that was a lot. And like, oh my gosh, this past year, I just laugh at myself because there were days like I woke up and you just totally felt like a grandma. But I'm refreshed right now and I'm rejuvenated and the training's been so fun and I don't know the first thing to know about rugby, but I'm gonna go out there and run around and see if they like me. So
That's That's very unexpected, but that's very awesome. Who
I
would have thought?
know, I know, I know. And
Has that ever been something that you're like, maybe rugby, or is it just all brand new?
no, I mean, I watched the Olympics last summer and I like threw some games on and I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like, I bet I'd be good at that, honestly. And then I just like never think about it again. But I've always been a stocky body. I've always been strong. I've always enjoyed lifting. Um, and I've always been a very physical basketball player. Like the contact is what I thrive in. That's why I've shot so many free throws this year because every time I got the ball, just challenged my defender and it was like, you're either gonna let me get to the bucket or you're gonna have to foul me. It's, pick your poison. Um, so I'm really excited because I actually think like the things that I thrived in basketball, I that's gonna translate over to the game of rugby. I have to learn the rules and techniques and such things as that. Those things seem to be important, but we'll worry about that once I pass the strength and conditioning test. So yeah.
Okay. Do you have a rugby ball? Has that been acquired?
Yes, I just got one this week.
Okay, okay.
Threw it around in the park with one of my friends the other day. And I really, I'm not gonna brag, but it came off my hands quite naturally. And I'm not 100% sure if I'm doing it right, but I'm just flicking it like I see the girls doing it on YouTube. Um, so yeah, we'll see. But I've got a rugby ball. I need to get a book like Rugby for Dummies or something like that.
And you said that's in June?
Yeah, June 9th through 11th in San Diego at the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista.
Okay. Well, you'll have to keep everyone updated with that. That's really exciting. That's
I
awesome.
definitely will. I definitely will. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So my next question, that was awesome. Was not expecting rugby to come into the conversation. But I wanted to talk about how it was at like your post-game press conference at your final game, and you were talking about how you went into school to pursue law, and then you shifted to creative writing. And so, I mean, definitely a little bit of a change. And so, what went into that? Like, what kind of inspired that kind of switch from going to law to pursuing creative writing?
Yeah, so I had this multiculturalism class in my political science undergrad. Um, and it was kind of one of those classes it was like to check a box. I really wasn't into it that much. Um, until finals were coming around and you had the option of a research essay or a creative like option. So I didn't know what I was gonna do for the final, and I my grandmother had passed away a couple months prior, so I went home one weekend and I was helping my dad clean out my grandparents' house. My grandfather passed away in 2010, and then grandma in 2021. Um, so we're cleaning out this little house that they lived in for 70 years. I mean, my grandpa built it when they got married and they never moved. They lived in that same house. Found this old wooden box um, with World War II memorabilia because my grandfather was a Marine during World War II. He served on Iwo Jima. Was one of 8 men to come back out of their 100-man company. Like it was, yeah. And in that box, I've always been a little bit of history buff, and that hence the political science. And and I have a lot of military history in my family. I've always been interested in, the history of war and such. So I find these 5 postcards in this box, and they're written in Japanese caricatures. And I don't know. I asked my dad, he doesn't know about them. I don't know why my grandfather had them or why he kept them for 85 years. Um, so for this project, I took a shot in the dark. I knew this man named Bob Sakamoto. He worked in the media department at DePaul Athletics, and I asked him, I was like, hey. He's this old Japanese guy. I was like, do you know anybody who knows anybody who could read these? And he gave me the number of his wife's barber, who was friends with the president of the Japanese American Service Committee, whose 91-year-old mother, who immigrated to America from Japan, was able to translate the postcards for me. And ended up doing a essay just on that whole experience. And talking with these different people and having these letters translated. And the letters were just it was postcards from Japanese soldiers to their families, and then a couple from the families to the soldiers. And it is just miss you. You know, hope the crops are good. tell my baby I love him. I hope to see you all soon. I'm prepared to serve my country, you know, and complete my duty and things like that. Um, but it was just a really, really cool moment for me because in that essay, I wasn't writing it like an essay. I was telling it like a story. And I finally realized I don't think it's only, the history that I love and the politics that I love. It's the storytelling because, and that's when I kind of got into creative writing. And after I finished my undergrad, I had the option to get a master's degree because of my COVID year and my redshirt year. And I wanted to stay and play basketball, and I needed a master's degree. And I thought, why not just study something that I'm just really, really interested in? And yeah, that's kind of where I went with it. But that's how I got into creative writing was through my family, and I love writing about my family because my family is full of really, really cool stories like that. And I think I love writing nonfiction because I think the best stories are normal people doing normal things because life is just interesting if you let it be.
That is an incredible story. That's awesome. Wow. So, I'm just trying to think about, so I know you said like for your thesis and you're kind of into like nonfiction writing, but then you also have this like creative writing side. And so I know you have plenty of time to write several different things, but is there pieces of work besides the ones you just mentioned where like an author has written something or you've read a book where you're like, man, I want to write something like that? And like, if so, kind of what are some pieces of work that's inspired you?
Um, there's this book called The Greatest Generation, and it's just kind of this author, I think his name's Tom Brokaw, something like that. He's interviewed people who served in the military or who were at home during World War II. Um, and that's kind of what inspired me to do the whole project on the Japanese letters for that class because it was, a very it's very individualized and personal stories, how they relate to a global conflict. And that's what really interests me is how do how does one person, how is one person affected and impacted by global situations and vice versa. How can you as an individual impact the world around you? And like that connection between the macro and the micro is what always has interested me. So that book is really what got me thinking that I could do something creative um, in the political science world. But then just speaking on like just like writing, I got into memoirs, and I loved, one of my favorites is called Safekeeping by Abigail Thomas. And every chapter is titled, and it could almost stand alone as its own personal essay, I guess. And it's just little snapshots of her life, of conversations, talking about motherhood and mistakes she's made, things she regrets. Um, and it's I love seeing just like the moments that stick with somebody, I guess. And that's I think that what's so awesome about writing, and then especially writing about yourself, is you get to relive those moments that you think about or that you think really impacted you. Um, and sharing that with somebody else and having that connection of maybe they didn't experience the exact same thing or at the exact same moment, but they can relate to it. And that relation is what makes writing so fulfilling for me, is because I love that connection between some, like having another connection with somebody. Like, yeah, me too. Like reading something and just going, yeah, me too. Um, it's that it's the balance between um fitting in and sticking out. So you want to share a story and you want to have something in common with somebody, but then you also want to share what makes your story unique. So memoirs like Safekeeping, and then I could list a whole bunch of others, but um yeah, that's what has inspired me to write, and that's the kind of writing that I really, really enjoy.
Okay. So just to kind of, I guess, tie it all back together, I know you said you're writing this about your own basketball journey. And so the last question for you is, where are you starting with that journey? Are you starting with it at DePaul? Are you starting with it at your first year at Indiana, or like in high school growing up? And um, where does it end? Do you think it ends at DePaul, or do you think it's still kind of being written right now?
It starts in the driveway. Um, in my driveway. It's just like this scene shooting hoops when I was little, and you pretend you count down from 5 or 10, and like you're hitting, you just imagine yourself hitting that game-winning shot. I just remember doing that growing up. And I take myself through my childhood and high school and my freshman year at IU and my time at DePaul. It's all encompassing. It's a story of my life so far, which is kind of funny because in the grand scheme of things, I haven't lived that much of it, I guess. I'm only 24, but just reflecting on the game and then all that's gone into it and who I am as a person, being a female athlete, younger and then growing up as an athlete and finding my identity in that. And there was moments I think a lot of college athletes, especially women, go through this, and there's just this clash of what it is to be an athlete and what it is to be a woman. And that has always really interested me as well. Um, just with the whole strength and power and femininity and um yeah, so it's just talking about, I mean, a lot of it's going to be what my experience at DePaul though, because that's where a lot of my growth has happened these past 5 years. Living in Lincoln Park, going every day, telling Coach Bruno good morning and then getting to work and then just thinking back on all the conversations, all the moments that you want to talk about. That's what it's going to be about. It's still being written, but as far as the actual, basketball, I think that chapter is done in my life. Um, so now I've just kind of got to write the story. So, and that's what I'm most excited about right now.
Awesome. Well, Jory, that's all I have for you today. It was an absolute pleasure getting to talk to you.
Thanks, Justin. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, have a great day.
You too.